Hello, I'm EAC Commissioner Hovland. For Cybersecurity Awareness Month, the EAC is speaking with subject matter experts on a range of security topics as they relate to the administration of elections. The security of voting systems and election supporting technology, as well as general operations, is a year-round focus for election officials. Given the ever-changing threat landscape, along with the increased attention and responsibilities of the upcoming presidential election, there's no better time than now to discuss this topic. Joining me today to discuss some basics of cybersecurity is Geoff Hale from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. Geoff leads the Election Security and Resilience team at CISA's National Risk Management Center. In this role, Geoff has worked to build security and resilience to cyber, physical, and foreign influence threats, and has been a key part of CISA's election security mission since it began in 2016. At CISA, his team is continuing to work with partners to understand risks to election infrastructure and where CISA's services can add value to election security. CISA and the EAC often work together to support election officials, and I hope this is just another resource that will be helpful. And again, as we go into Cybersecurity Awareness Month, there's a lot of talk out there around artificial intelligence and many other things, but this one is really about the basics. And there's an enormous number of sports metaphors that I could really just probably fill up the whole time of this conversation with about blocking and tackling and the basics, but we won't, and we'll just sort of jump into it. But again, it's important to keep your eye on the ball, keep those basics in mind with cybersecurity practices, because it makes such a difference. And so, Geoff Hale, thank you for joining me today and highlighting some of these areas and talking through it. And so, just to jump right into it, to the point I was making, would love to just talk about for election officials out there who may be watching this, and again, time is always a constraint and a concern. What is that best return on investment in the cyber defense area? And here I think about, I know I've heard some statistics about just the basics, like patching and multi-factor authentication can protect this huge percentage of your potential attacks. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Commissioner. It's a pleasure to be here to help support cybersecurity awareness. You hit the top two in our mind. Implementing multi-factor authentication is an effective tool to prevent intrusions from going further. Our director, the Director Jen Easterly, likes to note that enabling multi-factor makes you 99% less likely to get hacked. But sometimes I wonder if everybody knows what multi-factor means. We throw around the term MFA a lot, but really it's using separate factors to help verify your identity. So this can often be something like a password or a PIN number, in combination with something you have or something you are. So something you have would be, sometimes there's either a key or an authentication token or a confirmation text to your phone, or something you are is something you can't change, like your fingerprint or a scan of your face or iris. And this really helps the likelihood that if your credentials, if your password, if your username and password are stolen by a bad actor, they would still need to have something else in order to really compromise your system. So really, we are strongly encouraging all election jurisdictions to implement multi-factor on those critical systems. So if you're accessing a voter registration system, or if you are engaging in business email, all of these things can really help with securing your systems. Beyond multi-factor authentication, we strongly recommend that officials work with their IT leads to keep their systems patched, to address known vulnerabilities and configuration errors. One of the cool things that I think CISA has done is really work to identify those known exploited vulnerabilities, and we keep a list that That's now about 1,000. But this list is not assessing the criticality of vulnerabilities. So it's not telling you this is critical and this is high and these two are low. It's really focusing on what do bad actors use? Um, which keys do they have to your house or garage opener? Or we'll go on many mixed metaphor journeys here. Identifying those and prioritizing addressing the vulnerabilities that you know the bad actors have and like to use helps to ensure you're reducing the likelihood that you are that organization that gets compromised.
Well, and those would be exploited for things like, I mean, maybe it's stealing your information or accessing your system, or in a ransomware scenario, correct?
Yeah, often it's the same vulnerabilities, the same exploits that enable multiple consequences to be imposed. Yes.
That's great. One other thing, you hit on this on multi-factor, but just in the public service announcement that is this recording, we're mostly here focused on work systems and keeping office systems secure. But again, I know most common email, if you've got a Gmail or an account like that, it has the ability to enable that multi-factor authentication too, and as more election officials have become targets, hugely valuable to also do that in your personal life as well. So just a plug for that. And another thing that you mentioned that made me think about it, or something I wanted to ask about. You mentioned election officials going to their IT team and thinking about for that patching or for keeping their systems current. We know that a significant number of election officials are on their city or county IT infrastructure. They may not have total control over their systems. And so, if somebody's watching this and they're in that scenario, what are some of the questions that they should be asking their IT or their technical support?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly establishing that relationship with the network defenders that administer and help protect the infrastructure on which the election office resides is a critical relationship to have. We often encourage election officials to understand how the county or city IT leads segment their network. So trying to think through more accessible language. Oftentimes it's described as logical partitions. I don't know that that's more accessible, but really, how are you
If you're
creating
a
those?
standalone, basically, like if elections is separate from the rest or something like
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
How are you making those parts of your network distinct, so that if another portion, if a user at another part of the city or county gets compromised, if they are exploited and encrypted with ransomware, how are you protecting the election office from this? So one of those ways is segmenting your network, making those distinct boundaries across a network, and having access controls that limit to certain users, limit the access of certain users, so that bad actors can't move throughout a network freely. Other areas that we'd want them to understand: what is the county or the city or county's patch management process? Where are they getting their information about particular risks and threats to these networks? Are they part of the information sharing and analysis centers, either the EI ISAC, the multi-state ISAC, or other paid for services? And are they taking on efforts like we like to promote, having a .gov top level domain to help make it clear that these organizations are government entities, and that when interacting with the public, you are that trusted position as a government entity.
Definitely. And I think, one thing there that you mentioned in particular, the segmented networks or the limiting access, again, I think, makes so much sense. Or you think about offices that have, either people with particular duties or maybe they're temp folks that are keying in voter registration cards. Those folks obviously don't need to have access to your entire network.
They don't need to be able to make changes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think about, and as I mentioned in your bio, you've now you've been in this election space for a while, and I think about how much it's sort of changed since 2016. And one of the areas is a little different but related that I've sort of noticed an uptick in awareness around is physical port blockers for computers. I've been out traveling around the country, looking, visiting offices around the country, and I've really started to see these in more places than I had before. And maybe it's because I'm looking, or maybe it's because more people are picking up on it. But my understanding is this is a relatively low-cost physical solution to reduce risk. Can you talk a little bit more about what these are for people that are unfamiliar and how they can be beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like about this question is really the recognition that sometimes we're talking about software compromises, software exploits, the digital cyberspace. It's certainly for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but these assets, these endpoints, the devices that people are using exist in physical space. And so whether it's a voting system, which largely are not connected to the internet, or just your computer, the ability to prevent the physical access to those systems through simple little tools like port blockers, which are often just a cover, a seal or cover to the physical access that allows you to connect to these systems. These controls can prevent unauthorized connections of flash drives or USB drives or whatever type of port it is, and really help address those accesses that may enable other types of compromise. So certainly think through the physical space in which your devices exist and who has access to that, in addition to the way you're protecting them from the dangers of cyberspace.
That's great. I have a suspicion that one of the reasons I've seen more of those out there is that people have been getting physical security assessments from CISA, and those are a recommendation, and again, a fairly easy one to implement. But it makes me think about, again, I know there's been a lot of talk about this for the last couple of years, but for folks that are maybe a little less familiar, can you talk more about what services CISA does have for election offices, and for those in particular that are obviously looking to strengthen their cybersecurity or physical security posture? And then just as you talk about those, if you can talk about the best way for anyone watching this to connect to those resources as well.
Fantastic. I appreciate the opportunity there. Yes. So, of course, we are the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And in line with that, we have both cybersecurity and physical security assessments. We have frontline staff deployed across the country, more than 650 of them, that help to identify which services and risks that we can assist critical infrastructure with. In this case, election infrastructure. Election officials are part of that critical infrastructure dynamic. And so many of them that we like to focus on the physical security side, doing a security at first entry assessment, or assessing your organization according to other best practices and leading practices across security. This can understand where your next dollar can help protect the physical security elements, or what standard practices for other organizations might be that the election organization can benefit from. What I really like to hear from election officials, having gone through any of these assessments, is how the recommendations at the end, coming from a third party like CISA, has been able to enable these election officials to go to their county, to go to their legislatures, to go to their appropriators and say, here are the recommendations to bring us to a more secure posture. And they're really finding success in arguing for more funding for those purposes. As you know, certainly funding for election organizations is a key element of both of our mission sets to enable them to implement those best practices to administer elections securely. On the cybersecurity side, we also have no-cost voluntary services that help organizations identify what vulnerabilities exist and help identify those regular patches. I mentioned the .gov top-level domain, so at the end of your email or at the end of your website, instead of .com, it is .gov. That is a verified identity top-level domain. That is a managed top-level domain, so only government entities can have those. It helps to protect against the being impersonated or spoofed in many ways. We have more sophisticated cybersecurity services as well, like remote penetration testing or risk and vulnerability assessments, that when you are ready for something of that maturity, please talk to our CISA field staff to identify how best to plug into those. And then, of course, we fund the EISAC, the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, that also provides key services to election officials. So there's a full range of opportunities to engage to help identify and address some of the security practices. If you're not getting what you need from field staff, I always offer myself and my team as a resource. You can always reach out to our headquarters with election security at CISA.dhs.gov, and we'll make sure you have the right connections you need.
That's great. You know, again, I think there are so many parallels, I think, with the way that, you know, I know there was consternation about sort of the critical infrastructure designation. And I think as time has passed and we've sort of learned how this fits, there's so much about the CISA relationship with state and locals that mirrors the EAC, where I talk a lot about how we're a customer service agency. You know, these are voluntary services, you know, in many of the ways that we offer best practices, and it's really looking to enhance or to provide federal resources where they're applicable or needed. And so I hope that folks watching this will take advantage of that and be aware of that. But you know, as a thank you for coming on, Geoff, I'll give you an opportunity here in closing to just say, you know, if you could have everyone watching this do one thing to improve their cybersecurity posture, you know, what would that one thing be?
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. It truly is a pleasure, and I certainly appreciate the partnership with EAC. I'm going to cheat on this a little bit, because the one thing that I would like every election official to do is to engage their CISA field staff, because we recognize that elections are so unique from state to state, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, that our ability to understand and give a one-size-fits-all recommendation that's of limited value. So engage your CISA field staff, help them understand what your posture is, how you administer elections, so that they can help to connect you to the right resources. Again, if you need help connecting to those to that CISA field staff, please email my team at electionsecurity@cisa.dhs.gov. And then to always throw in one extra one, I do really advocate for the EISAC, the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center. It's no cost to election officials. Joining it provides kind of cybersecurity focused, tailored threats and vulnerability information. And it's an additional way to stay connected to the larger security apparatus. Of course, we can help connect you to that too, but the EISAC is well known, and I imagine part of the Cybersecurity Awareness Month as well.
Well, appreciate that answer, and I'll take a moderator's privilege here and circle back to where we started and remind people, you know, if you've made it this far, make sure you're patching, make sure you're doing the upgrades, look into multi-factor authentication and figure that out. And if you have questions about any of it, reach out and ask somebody. Again, as you heard, it's such a big deal in making sure our systems are secure. Well, we hope you do that all of the time. Certainly Cybersecurity Awareness Month, that's part of why we have it, as a as a reminder of that. So thank you, Geoff Hale, for being here, and CISA for your work. We look forward to continuing to work with you on these and other issues.